My name's Ray Collier. I'm 61 now. I wasn't then. This is about Breathitt County, Kentucky, October 2009. Fog sitting in the hollows, the way it does up here in fall, not weather. More like a decision the valley made overnight. I'd been back from my second tour 14 months. Living alone off Quicksand Road in a place I bought for quiet and affordability, both of which it had in excess. I ran firewood out of the back acreage, kept my hands working. That was the strategy. I want to be clear about who I am before I tell you what happened. I was a combat engineer for 22 years. I've been in places that were actively trying to kill me. I know the difference between an environment that is dangerous and an environment that merely feels that way. I know what my nervous system does under pressure, and I know how to account for it. I'm telling you this so you understand what it means when I say, I don't know what was on that property. I don't know what it wanted, and I don't know why it stopped. What I know is that for 23 days in October 2009, something was there. Something that knew I was there too, and something that was patient in a way that animals aren't, and deliberate in a way that people aren't, and wrong in a way I don't have clean language for. I've never said the word out loud to another person. I'm saying it now because I'm 61 and I'm tired of carrying it alone. I heard it first from a man named Darnell at the lumber yard in Jackson. A Navajo word, he said, but the thing it named wasn't Navajo, wasn't regional, wasn't anybody's property. Just a word for a category of thing that most people decide doesn't exist. He said it the way you say the name of a disease you've already survived. Careful and with distance. Skinwalker. I filed it. Kept moving. That was October 3rd. By October 26th, I understood why he'd said it the way he did. On October 5th, I was stacking the last of a split run before dark, when the dog from Earl Combs's property up the road started up. Blue tick hound. Good animal. Vocal when there was cause. She'd been going on and off for an hour, not the sustained bark of something treed. More like she kept losing whatever she was tracking and finding it again from a different direction. Then she stopped mid-bark, not wound down. Stopped. The silence after a dog stops mid-bark is a specific kind of silence. It has texture. I stood still with a piece of split oak in each hand and I listened. From the far end of the woodlot, something moved through the brush. Heavy, upright, 2-footed. I'm certain of that. The weight distribution was wrong for 4 legs. The pace was wrong. It moved about 30 yards along the tree line and then it stopped. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough that the piece of oak in my left hand got cold. Whatever it was didn't move again. Didn't leave, as far as I could tell. Just stopped and held position. The way you hold position when you want to be noticed but not confronted. I went inside. I locked the back door. I noted the time in the notebook I keep on the kitchen table. 17:12 hours. Movement in tree line, eastern edge of woodlot. Bipedal, heavy. Stopped and held. Duration of observation, approximately 4 minutes. No visual confirm. Wind from the north. It knew I was there. I made dinner. I ate it standing at the counter facing the back window. That night, the dog at Earl's didn't make a sound. Not once, all night. 3 days later, I went out at first light to pull the tarp off the woodpile and found the tarp had been moved. Not blown, moved. Folded back on itself, one corner tucked under. The way you'd fold something if you had hands and patience and wanted access to what was underneath. 2 pieces of split wood had been removed from the top row and placed on the ground beside the pile, side by side, parallel, about a foot apart. Neat. Intentional. A demonstration. I crouched and looked at the ground around the pile. Soft earth from the overnight rain. No boot prints, no animal tracks I could identify. Just a long depression in the mud, like something had crouched there for a while. Wide. The radius of it wider than a man. I took photographs this time. I still have them. They don't prove anything. The depression in mud proves nothing. But I took them because the engineer in me said, document what you find. I recovered the pile. I noted it. I told myself the wind had moved the tarp and an animal had moved the wood, and I noted that I didn't believe either of those things when I wrote them down. That evening I sat on the back porch with a coffee and watched the tree line until it went dark. Nothing moved. But at some point, I can't place exactly when, I became aware that the quality of the silence had changed. Not quiet. Watched. The difference is real. I've been in hides. I know the feeling of being the one doing the watching. This was the other side of that equation. I went inside and didn't go back out until morning. I drove into Jackson for 1/4-inch lag bolts and mentioned the tarp to Darnell Hayes at the counter. Not the whole of it, just the tarp and the wood. I was fishing, I admit. I wanted to see if he'd give me something useful without me having to ask directly. Darnell is a Dene man, Navajo, who came to eastern Kentucky in the 80s and stayed. He's worked the lumber yard as long as anyone can remember. He's not a man who embellishes. He looked at me for a moment. Then he asked which direction the tree line ran from my property. East and north, I said. Ridge behind. He nodded. Slow. The way a man nods when the answer fits something he was already thinking. He told me about a thing his grandmother talked about, a category of thing, he was careful to say. Not a story, not a legend. A category. Something that wears shapes that don't belong to it. Something that is patient. Something that doesn't want your land or your food or anything with a name you can say cleanly. Something that wants your attention or your fear, or something in between that doesn't have a word in English. If it moved the wood, he said, it wanted you to know it moved the wood. He said the name then, once. Quiet. He said it the way you say something that has weight you don't want to drop carelessly. I drove home on 15 with both hands on the wheel. At the turnoff onto Quicksand Road, I slowed to a stop and sat in the truck for a minute with the engine running. The ridge was clear, bright fall day, red and orange on the canopy, sky high and cold. I drove up to the house and went inside and sat at the kitchen table and looked at my notebook for a long time. Then I wrote the word down, just once, at the bottom of the page. I was reading when it knocked, not on the door, on the wall, the exterior wall of the back bedroom, where the siding meets the cinder block foundation. 3 knocks, low down, deliberate. The kind of knock that says, I know the layout of this structure. The kind that says I've been close enough to learn it. I put the book down and sat still. The knock came again. Same wall. Higher up this time, about chest height, like something was rising along the outside of the house. 3 knocks. Same spacing. I got up and went to the back window without turning on a light. Looked out. The motion light over the garage was dark. It's triggered by heat and movement. Whatever was against the exterior wall of the house was either not warm enough or had learned where the sensor pointed. I pressed my hand flat against the wall from the inside. It was cold. Standard, but there was a vibration in it that I couldn't account for, a low, almost subsonic hum, like something on the other side of the wall was breathing against it. I said nothing. I did not knock back. I did not give it the acknowledgement of a response. It did not knock again that night. I moved my sleeping bag to the front room. I noted the event. I noted that I had not felt this specific quality of dread since a night in 2004 in a building in Kandahar where the walls turned out to not be empty. I did not sleep before 4 a.m. October 17th. I found an animal in the woodlot, a deer, doe, laid at the base of the stack nearest the tree line on her side, legs folded under in a way that wasn't natural, arranged, not killed there, no blood in the ground, brought there. She'd been dead a while, night cold but not stiff, eyes open and flat. The thing I noted, her legs were folded, both pairs, tucked under the body symmetrically, the way you'd fold something if you wanted to take up less space, the way you'd lay something down if you were being careful with it. Beside her on the top of the wood stack, something had pressed a mark into the bark of a piece of split oak. Deep, parallel channels, not claw marks, too even, too deliberate. 3 lines, each about 4 inches long, like a signature, like a notation. I buried the deer at the edge of the property. I burned the marked piece of oak. I noted both actions in the book. I noted that I was not frightened in the way a strange event frightens you. I was frightened in the way a pattern frightens you, when the pattern becomes undeniable and you realize it has been assembling itself for longer than you noticed. I called Darnell that evening. I described the deer and the marks. He was quiet for a long time. "Don't answer it," he said. "Don't knock back. Don't call out to it. Don't leave anything for it." I told him I hadn't. "Good," he said. "Don't change that." It used my voice. I want to be accurate about this because accuracy is all I have, and accuracy is the only thing that distinguishes this account from the kind of account I would never have given any credibility to before that night. I was awake, lying in the front room, rain on the roof, window cracked an inch for air. A sound from the back porch, the specific creak of the second board from the top step, which has a particular pitch. I know the way I know the sound of my own truck engine, and then my own voice, from outside, from the back porch, still on. 2 words in my voice, my cadence. A phrase I'd used that evening, talking to myself about the porch light. Still on, the exact phrase, the exact register. Not a recording, not an echo. Shaped, offered. I lay completely still. I controlled my breathing. My heart rate was elevated, and I noted it, and I managed it the way I've been trained to manage it. I did not respond. I did not move to the window. I did not give it the confirmation it was asking for. The porch step creaked again. Once, retreating. Then nothing. Rain on the roof. Creak over limestone. The ordinary sounds of an October night in eastern Kentucky, as if the previous 30 seconds had been edited out of the recording and the tape spliced back together. I turned every light in the house on. I sat at the kitchen table with my back to the wall and waited for morning. I told Earl Combs some of it over breakfast. Not the voice, not the deer, the knocks, the tarp, the sense of something on the property. I used neutral language, something big. moving on two legs, patient. Earl is 73 years old. His family has been in Breathitt County for 6 generations. He listened without interrupting, which is not his usual method. When I finished, he turned his coffee cup in his hands. "My father called it the Walker," he said. "His father called it something in Cherokee I won't say here. My grandfather said, if it comes to the door, don't open it. If it uses a voice you know, don't answer it. If it leaves something, don't touch it." He said his grandfather also said, "It doesn't always want something from you. Sometimes it just wants to know if you'll break." I asked him if it ever stopped. He said, "Depends on what you give it. You give it nothing, sometimes it moves on. You give it anything, fear, acknowledgement, engagement, and it knows it has a hold." I thanked him, paid the check, drove home. I wrote "give it nothing" at the top of a fresh page in the notebook, underlined it twice. 23 days since the first movement in the tree line. I was at the kitchen table, not doing anything in particular. Waiting, if I'm honest. I'd begun to understand the schedule of it. The gaps, the intervals, the pattern of escalation followed by silence. The way it tested, and then withdrew, and then tested again from a different angle. A combat engineer learns to read the logic of a threat. You map it, you find the pattern. The pattern is never random. Everything that wants something has a method. 3 knocks at the back door. Door itself this time. Not the wall, not the tree line. The door. The smell hit with them is something I can only describe as burned animal hair and creek mud, and something beneath both of those that I don't have a reference for. Something that sat wrong in the back of the throat like a taste that isn't a taste. I sat at the table. I did not move. I did not speak. "Ray." My name. In a voice that was almost Earl's. The cadence right, the timbre off by a fraction. The way a translation is right in every word but wrong in every rhythm. Close enough to recognize, wrong enough to know. I pressed both hands flat on the table and I breathed. "Ray." Again. Closer to right this time. I said nothing. I gave it nothing. The instruction was clear and I followed it because discipline is what you have when everything else is negotiable. A long silence. Long enough that I began to wonder if I'd imagined the whole sequence. Then a sound against the door, not a knock. Slower. Like a palm pressed flat against the wood and drawn downward. Deliberate. Patient. Making sure I knew it was still there. Then steps off the porch. 4 of them, then nothing. I noted the time. I noted the sequence. I noted that I hadn't broken. I noted that my hands, when I lifted them from the table, were shaking in a fine, controlled way that I recognized from certain nights in certain places where I'd held the line, and it had cost me something. I'm going to tell you what I did, and I'm going to tell you that I don't know if it was the right decision. I don't know if there are right decisions in a situation with no manual. I sat on the back porch at 5 a.m. with my old phone recording audio, not video. I wanted my eyes free. I had a thermos of coffee. I had my notebook. I had 22 years of training and 6 weeks of accumulated dread and an instruction from an old man. Give it nothing. At 5:27, the thing came to the tree line. I know it was there because the creak sound dropped out. Not gradually, cut. Like a hand over a speaker. 40 yards of moving water gone to silence. The way sound behaves when something very large is absorbing it. And the smell. Heavy. present. The burned hair and wrong earth smell, but underneath it now something almost chemical, almost electrical, like the air before lightning. I sat still. I did not speak. I did not look directly at the tree line. From the periphery, the rods, not the cones, a shape at the wood's edge. Tall, not animal tall, not the broad silhouette of a bear. The vertical of something upright. Something that had chosen that shape was the thought I had, and I noted the thought and did not follow it. I gave it nothing. I sat with my hands around the thermos and I breathed, and I waited. It did not move from the tree line. We stayed like that for what the timestamp tells me was 11 minutes. I can't account for the duration from memory. Time moved strangely, the way it does under certain pressures. Then the creak sound came back, all at once, rushing back in like water through a breach. The shape at the tree line was not there, not gone, not there. The distinction matters. I didn't see it leave. It was simply absent where a moment before it had been present. I sat until it was fully light, until the ridgeline showed clear and the birds started up and the valley came back to ordinary. Then I went inside and I wrote in the notebook, October 26, 5:27 to 5:38. Final contact. No engagement. Line held. I underlined line held. It didn't come back. December 2011. I found the notebook while pulling a box from the closet shelf. 23 days of entries in my handwriting, every timestamp precise, every observation cataloged, the language stripped of anything I couldn't verify. At the bottom of the last page, the word Darnell had given me, written once, underlined once. I sat at the kitchen table and read the whole thing start to finish. It took 40 minutes. What I felt was not what I expected. I expected the distance of 2 years to make it smaller, more manageable, more explainable. It didn't. If anything, the record was worse with distance. Not because the events had grown, but because my language for them hadn't. I'd written them clean and precise, and the precision made them harder to dismiss, not easier. I called Darnell. He answered on the second ring. It stopped, I said. That was all. Good, he said. Put the notebook somewhere it won't be found by accident. Don't get rid of it. Just put it away. I asked him why not get rid of it. He was quiet for a moment. Because you might need to remember that you held, he said. Later, when you're not sure. I put the notebook in the lockbox with my discharge papers and my grandfather's watch. I have not reread it since. New house now. A rental 2 miles from the VA clinic in Hazard. Street noise. Neighbors with a dog. A strip of trees behind the property along the drainage easement, 30 feet wide maybe. A corridor. I'm on the back steps with a coffee and the storm door propped open for the evening air. It's a Tuesday in July, clear, warm. The ridge behind town gone orange in the last of the light. And the creek sound in the drainage ditch drops out. All at once. The way it did in October 2009. The way it did 11 times in 23 days on Quicksand Road. I sit very still, both hands around the mug, breathing. The smell doesn't come. The shape doesn't come. 30 seconds pass. The creek sound comes back. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe a vehicle on the road upstream diverted the water for a moment. Maybe the drought has dropped the water table and the ditch runs differently than I think it does. These are reasonable explanations. I'm a reasonable man. I finish my coffee. I go inside. I check the door locks. The front, the back, the side entrance. I turn the porch light on. I don't write it in a notebook. I don't call Darnell, who is 71 now and has enough of his own history to carry. I sit at the kitchen table for a while. Then I get up and I do the dishes and I turn the television on low and I sit where I can see both the front window and the back door at the same time. I do not know if what was on that property in 2009 is the same thing that just made the creek go quiet. I do not know if it followed me or found me or if this is coincidence and I'm a man with a pattern burned into him who sees it everywhere now. What I know is this. I held the line once. I know what it cost. I know what it required. I know that I cannot afford to give it anything. Not fear, not acknowledgement, not the satisfaction of watching me break. The porch light stays on. It has stayed on every night for 15 years. I don't know if that matters. I keep it on anyway.